Hello, guys. You know, it's funny when I was just drinking this just now because it reminded me of those commercials. You know when they always take that drink? I messed up because like you heard me swallow, but there was like, I used to practice that because I'm such a loud swallower. It was like ridiculous. And I was like, how do they do that in those commercials? Then I realized like sometime in high school, I was like, oh, because they're not actually drinking it. That's a random fact that you never knew that you needed. Hey, Raven. Okay, guys. So before we bring Raven in, I just want to make sure we're all here. Can someone please, because it's hard for me to type the thingy in, type in all caps Luster by Raven Leilani, Leilani, so I can pin that comment and let everybody know. Hey, Nini, hope you and the baby are well. We are just going to settle down in here. For those of you who've been reading along with us, or for those of you who are interested in the November selection for AMERIE'S Book Club, I'm going to back up because this is, I'm just like, round faces are not meant to be all up in the selfie thingy. Yes, Luster. I will let Raven tell you. Thanks, Vaughn, for pinning that, for making that comment for me. Boop. Alrighty, great. Much love to you guys too. I'm about to invite Raven in. She is here. Even if you guys have not finished the book, which is, I mean, look at this cover, you guys. She packs so much into this small story, into this small volume, like so much story. And yes, just to sing the writing, it's, we'll get into it. It's wonderful. It's amazing. All right, so let's invite her in. Thank you, Savage, Sharon. And remember, even if you guys haven't read this already, you can still stay in the chat with us, talk with us. And yes, so you can still read it. Okay. I'm going to request Raven in. If I remember correctly, this also won the Kirkus Prize this year. So yes. Hey, Raven.
Hi.
Hi,
It's
how are you?
amazing to be here. I'm such a fan. Very, very cool.
Well,
Amazing.
thank you for joining us. I don't want to tell everyone what the book is about, but first of all, I did get it correct, right? You just won the Kirkus Prize for last.
Yes.
Amazing. Someone just said the audiobook was amazing.
Oh, can I shout out Ariel Blake, who narrated the audiobook? She killed it. She's amazing.
Yes. And I also did the reading and bouncing between audiobook, you know, while I was like cooking and then like reading and then
I do the same.
is the audiobooks can make or break a story, seriously.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So I felt really lucky that Ariel is so amazing.
Did you get to, did you hear her before? Did you hear a few people beforehand before choosing the final narrator, or how did that process work?
I did. They actually sent me a handful of files, and when I heard her tape, I just knew. That's Edie.
Awesome. It has to be something though to have characters in your mind living and breathing in there, and to hear someone else saying those words, you know, bringing them to life.
What's funny is, like, I think that she delivers the book in a way that I could never in real time. I actually had to do like a recording where I read my own book, and I feel like I didn't realize until I had to do that the writing is such that it's kind of an ordeal. But I heard that if you put a cork in your mouth before you do the reading, then it's like, you know, very loose and natural.
Really?
Yes.
So if one is going to do a reading of their book, that is like an audiobook narrative for, that's the thing?
Yeah, you put cork in your mouth, and I think you say your ABCs or something like that. I think Caitlin Greenwich is the one who told me that that's a thing.
I narrated my own my own forward to an anthology that I edited, and I realized, I was like, hold on, we have to, because I was like, and I'm like, I'm hearing every like, I was like, it's making me feel like I can't breathe.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
And if you're wearing any jewelry too, like you can hear that. I'm sorry.
Everything. No, I was just going to say, please let everyone know. I'd rather them hear from you rather than from me what the book is about.
Sure. So the
Lester.
book is about a young Black woman who is kind of striving to seize the right to make art, trying to figure out how to carve out space around her, her job and her relationships to practice the thing that she loves. But it also is about, what it looks like and feels like to seek intimacy in the way that that is messy and strange.
And she is, as Vaughn James, one of the he's a huge avid reader, one of the big members of AMERIE'S book club. He said she's really messy, but, well, he didn't say messy. He said morally gray and flawed. And
Yes.
actually, I'll just let you know what he said exactly. He had a comment. He said, one and a question. One thing of many I appreciated about Lester is its unapologetic break from traditional depictions and narratives we are shown of Black women. We don't usually get to see flawed, morally gray Black women. They always seem to have it all together, be respectable, or be hiding away big parts of themselves. How important was it for you to make Edie such a wild card character? Did you ever feel pressure to reel her in or polish a sharp edge or two?
Oh man, I mean, it was so important to me. One, just because I am, like kind of quote unquote messy Black woman. I make a lot of mistakes and I'm fallible in the way I think every human is. And I think with Black women specifically, we're kind of tasked contending with like the quiet and also overt violence of our lives while also maintaining this pristine veneer. And I think that is ultimately dehumanizing. And so I wanted to afford a Black woman on the page the right to respond in a human way to that, and also, to make mistakes, to to do things, to misbehave. But when I was writing, like we have these there's this idea that there's a certain way to behave to be afforded consideration or empathy. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to depict a totally human Black woman who is kind of just trying to survive. And I wanted to present it without judgment. And I didn't, I actually didn't feel a lot of pressure to rein it in. I think by the time that I reached, the writing of this book, I was just ready to unleash.
I mean, the right itself is so sharp. Edie is just, her commentary. She's funny. She's unapologetic, but she it's almost like punches you in the face. I guess it's the best way. And it's just such sharp prose. I'm going to get into that too with you, with just asking about your writing process. I don't want us to go on that whole tangent just yet because we could probably go on that forever. Lots of questions regarding your craft. But for just even the beginning of the novel, what was the kernel for Lester? What was the or did that yeah? What was the beginning for that, for your process?
So I had been living in DC for 5 or 6 years, kind of trying to get my work out there. I'd been like writing poetry and short stories and like submitting to different magazines and trying to get some traction. And then, all that work I was doing that after my 9 to 5. I was going home and I was like getting out what little bit of work I could. And then I moved back to New York to do my MFA program where after much hand wringing, and I started the work on this book during those 2 years. When I came back to New York really truly with a mission. I felt almost that I was like, there isn't enough time. I kind of wrote this book a little bit in a panic. So I think that in a way kind of made its way onto the page. I was in school, I was writing this book, and I was working full time. And I didn't really think about it as I was writing it, but now in hindsight, I realized that what I was going through trying to carve out my own space to make, to write, is kind of replicated in this book. Media is trying to kind of, circumvent the kind of impediments to her, being able to access that art. And it's a real hustle. So I think that feeling, that kind of feeling of frenzy, and I have something inside me that I need to get out, and it feels urgent and dire. That's where it started, really truly where it started, where I came to the page really hungry, really angry, you know, and wanted to write an honest depiction about how, you know, how strange and how kind of not straightforward that journey is.
So why were you, I'm curious about this part where you felt like, kind of felt like you didn't have enough time, and you were,
Yeah.
you know, you were doing a lot of things, juggling. What was making you feel as if you had to create, that you had a certain time frame in which you had to create this?
You know, I think that it was, you know, I had been living outside of like New York, where I feel like is my home, for a while, and I had been trying to make it work. And every now and then something would stick. But I felt that I had spent too much time not throwing everything I had at it. And there are real reasons for that. You know, I was trying to live, I was trying to, you know, pay rent and student debt, you know, but I think that frenzy, I was tired of not giving my entire self to the thing that I knew that I loved and was here to do. And so I think that is kind of a big part of it.
That you were here to do. So you knew early, you knew this was, out of everything that you're doing, creating art through novels, this is like what you're here for.
I feel that deeply. And you know, I actually didn't always know that. I started painting. That was the first thing I ever really loved. And then I kind of put that aside, like when I was 18 or so. And then I picked up writing. And how I knew that I loved it and that I was here to do it was when it was hard, when it felt like crap, I still really loved it. Like I still wanted to do it. And that's how I kind of always measure like what's worthwhile, is when it's hard, do you still want to do it? And with writing, that was it.
Did you feel like you had to prove to yourself, because part of that thing of like that rush, it's like time is closing in on you, like you're running out of time, especially when you discover you feel
Oh
like
yeah,
you're doing the thing that you're here for, right? You got to do it before like something happens and you don't get it all out, right? Did you feel
that's
like
right.
mm-hmm. Oh, you know
Oh,
what,
I'm
there's a
sorry.
slight
No,
delay.
I was
So I was
gonna
like,
say that no, I mean you're totally right. I came back and you know, I think we have like a general trajectory of how we'd like our lives to go. And I mean, I think very seldom it actually goes that way. But I kind of saw those things that I want to do kind of looming as I kind of got closer, and kind of, and you know, got older, that that to not be doing that, or to not be trying to do that, felt like I was kind of, um, I don't know, authentic is such a fraught word, but I didn't feel like I was really um, living in a way that the future me uh, could be proud of, even if nothing had worked. You know, I just wanted to feel that I had done everything I could. So yeah, I think that really made it into the pages where, like I needed to write a story about a Black woman who's trying to pursue art, and she failed a lot, because you know, I failed a lot, and it was really instructive. And being able to kind of overcome that failure, being able to be on the other side of that, you kind of realize that it's necessary, you know, it's necessary. It hardens you in the way you have to be in order to kind of pursue something single-mindedly.
mm-hmm. Do you feel like there's a lot of pressure, specifically when it comes to the arts, whether it's painting, whether it's well, Edie is in publishing, and I feel like there is, I'm of two minds about it. I'm curious to know what you think. That in publishing specifically, there can be an almost fetish. For some reason, I'm stumbling over it. Fetishization
Yes, yes,
of youth and the young.
yes. Oh, yes,
Yeah, can we
yes.
unpack that a little bit?
Oh, 100%. You know, because I don't think that my panic was separate from how I've been socialized as a woman, you know, like all the kind of big life benchmarks that I, you know, thought I might have at this age or this age. And so that was definitely, doing this, making this book was pressurized by all the things that I wanted to do after the book and that were kind of coming closer as I got older. And I think that is I think that's a kind of real shame, the kind of way that we do fetishize youth. We kind of hold up kind of, really, it's an exceptional group of people who manage to do it while they're still young. But like writing this book, I wanted to talk about that, like the kinds of things that actually impede your access to art. I dealt with a kind of different version of it. I should say, like, I did manage to actually do this, like I'm 30 years old and I didn't think in this soon, but in writing about art and the ability to do it, I think it's almost important, as the description of art and what the art is, to talk about who has the privilege to practice, who has the time, who has the means. And for a long time, for a long time, I really felt taken up with work and trying to kind of satisfy those big survival questions in a way where the work was in the background. And so there's an element of this process for me that has felt like I have felt my luck and I have felt my privilege, because I do think if like a handful of things, if one thing had kind of gone wrong, right, or gone differently, maybe this book wouldn't be in the world. Like, the point is that it is really, it's a lot of us, I think, really have to fight to get to that place where our work is visible. I felt that every moment. And I think that was also part of why, I felt that energy.
One, it's interesting that you mentioned the privilege, because Edie, despite everything that's going wrong for her, like everything's just like tumbled down, she still recognizes her own privilege when she's saying that she's walking down the street and she looks at any Black couple over 50 and she realizes that despite her whole world tumble down, despite feeling like she doesn't have anything that's hers, it's very hard for her to carve out her space. Black people, specifically over 50, have dealt with some things that she will never have to deal with. And
That's
she
right.
recognizes that. She's
Yes.
dude. Yet she can make such bad decisions. So she's so,
yes.
but she knows, she sees. It's almost, I felt like whenever she was even just like relaying all of her, for those of you who haven't yet read the book, there's a lot of, she's basically been with everybody in the office pretty much, just like everyone. But she was almost like an out of body situation. I felt as if she were almost outside of herself, even as she's just recounting to us or to herself, to the reader,
Yes,
what happened. And I'm like, you're so smart. You so recognize everything around you, yet you make all of these terrible decisions, and yet you see yourself making them. It's almost as if she's at a remove, and she just kind of just goes through the motions of that.
100%. Like there's an element of this character, and I think of just like, being a Black woman where you, in order to survive, you have to be studious. You have to be observant, and that kind of makes it harder to be fully present in your body. She goes out on a date with Eric in the beginning, and he tells her kind of casually, oh, you can be yourself. You can let down your mask. Because he doesn't understand the kind of way of living where you are constantly, for your own survival, calculating, trying to figure out what is the best kind of version of myself to project so that I am most safe. And doing that, kind of indulging that performance, you're right, it makes it so that you're almost outside of your body. And so when she's fooling around in the office with like, a bunch of the men that she kind of comes into contact with, even those kind of, hookups are a little bit disembodied. You can see her trying to seek pleasure where she can at this job that is not really, paying her anything. But she's still at a distance And so I do think that that understanding of the way your body is imperiled, it makes it so much harder to be present, to be genuine. And you're right too about her reflecting on her, ancestors. Though she almost has the right to misbehave and to make mistakes because of them, because of how they lived. And she understands that. And so she understands that to not kind of seize what's in front of her, to not be able to do that, even though there are reasons, is almost, it feels in a way like a disservice to what they've all been through. And her parents have different generations. Her dad is like an older veteran. Her mom is, a bit younger, but I thought that was important to acknowledge the kind of different, different Americas that our generations have had. Her America is different from her dad's, from her mother's. And there are still challenges, but I think it's worth acknowledging in a book that is very much about, about a very chaotic person, but a person who is aware that she is in a continuum of people who have been kind of striving for that right to be human.
It's interesting too, because she's also in a world in which she's moving through white spaces, right? She's in a very diverse city, but her job in publishing is very white. She's and in a way I almost feel like she's an artist who creates her art, but she's also kind of like, it's not exactly the same as like where you know how the sausages are made, not exactly like that, because people are who love books, right? So they love the art of it. At the same time, it is a business, and it's like art commodified. And then of course she's moving through that. You know what I mean? Like, what made you choose publishing specifically as, because she could have had any occupation. Why publishing?
Sure. I mean, handful of reasons. One, I was working in publishing as I wrote this book. And kind of two, I think I'm, as a writer, I felt enormous anxiety about that commodification, about what it meant to be trying to write a book like this toward a market that does look like that. And then kind of third, I kind of wanted to, I wanted to speak bluntly about the way that, the demands of the market, the commodification of Black pain, the way that kind of precludes anyone who's kind of trying to do something that is their own, that is sort of outside of what is marketable, what is palatable and palatable to an audience that is generally not of the community that is being commodified. And so I really, I wanted to speak to that. And, of course it was tricky because I'm writing a book, I work within this industry that I was absolutely kind of, extremely critical of, but I thought it was necessary. I'm not alone in that feeling. And I think to open up the idea of what constitutes Black art, especially Black art that we invest in, is to make it so that there's more art, more art.
What I find so interesting too, is that, right now, of course, people are like, oh, would you submit a pandemic book? The editors don't really want to see pandemic books because it's like the pandemic. Everyone's like, no virus books, no pandemic books, which on the face of it, we could say, oh, I get it. Right. But then I was like, well, Black people have dealt with a lot of pain in this country. And it's like the stuff that we're seeing right now, this reckoning and everything, this stuff is old news. It's just that everyone else is finally listening to what we've been saying.
That's right.
I'm like, but Black people have been dealing with Black pain for 100 years.
Yeah.
And yet publishing is like, this book. Sometimes I'm like, oh, if it's a certain thing that's happening in the book, I'm like, I don't really want to read it. It's just, I don't want more of it. But boy, you have like 8 months pandemic and people are like, I can't read pandemic books. It's too much. It's too
right. That's right. I mean, right. Because there's an element of having that, like kind of having a lot of that content that that does the opposite thing of what it's purporting to do. It desensitizes you. to that, as opposed to, you know, but like this moment we're in, people feel the kind of weirdness of replicating that on the page.
I'm like, imagine 400 years of like pandemic vibes. These vibes you're getting right
Right.
now. Imagine like 3 generations and people are still pandemic books. And every time it's like a book, every time it's like a movie for an Oscar, it's like a pandemic Oscar. I'm like, then you can kind of understand where we come from.
Yeah.
I really feel like slavery based movie right now, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
because, and it's like, it's hard because you do see, and that's another thing I want to ask you too, relating to this, but you do see how I'm seeing more stories in which I'm both in YA and in adult, where I'm seeing more like, this is like a black girl, black boy joy, black girl magic,
yes.
not a black pain book. Not to say that those stories are not important, because lest anyone forget, those are, we must remember, but I think it's important to have a diversity of the types of stories that we see ourselves in and that we're in. It's important.
Right. I think that's all like we're kind of, you know, wanting, because I also agree very much with that there is a camp, you know, of art where they don't want to see me, you know, kind of black pain or trauma, but that kind of blanket generalization steps on the fact that a lot of the power that you kind of regain is in being able to speak that, you know, like I think that there can be a really repressive strain of only joy, only happiness. But I think that, you know, because that's not the whole thing. So I think all stories are, you know, stories about, you know, different experiences, joyful or not, have value. But like you said, I think that we're, you know, we are just hoping that there will be more space for the joy. Yeah.
You feel as, and that's what I was going to ask you too, as a black writer, actually it's going to be two questions. As a black writer, did you feel, what kind of pressure, if any at all, did you feel regarding the kind of story you needed to create, or that you felt like publishing, your editors or the reading public in general wanted from you? And two, did it occur to you, especially when you were writing, say, her father, Edie's father, and you're creating him, there is a certain, within our own community, a certain critique when it comes to black female writers, that you guys are kind of like giving giving black men a bad hand. Was that at all in your awareness, and what was that like?
So, I mean, I definitely felt pressure of, one, kind of feeling like you know, I wanted to write a story that felt specific and that felt urgent to me, while understanding that there's a market that had an appetite for a story that I wasn't interested in writing at all. And I felt the pressure of, because it's, you know, it's not a secret, like it's harder to get real investment in your work when you're a Black woman. So I felt a lot of responsibility and pressure around this book doing well, 100%. And I felt, in depicting, you know, specifically Edie's dad, you know, he's a veteran, and they have a really dysfunctional relationship. Most of her relationships are dysfunctional, but like in that context, the reason I included that, and I could say, you know, I actually drew in a way from my own life. My dad was a veteran, like much older, and really struggled with PTSD when he came back. And so I kind of grew up watching what it looks like for, well, also kind of what it looks like for a Black soldier, because he was much older, I should say much older. When he came back from the war, he went to like a restaurant on like the Upper West Side or something like that, and they refused to like give him good service, and he left $1 torn in half on the table. That's a story that I think about a lot, because of, I mean, his character specifically is a character who has given his body to his country, you know, has fought a war and has come back and realize that he is a second-class citizen. And I wanted to write about that kind of conflict, but also the way that, you know, being a person like who is impacted by war ripples throughout his relationships. And in a way, it absolutely affects how he relates to his daughter. And having that relationship there, you know, kind of what I hoped was a kind of realistic depiction of a relationship that can happen between, you know, a daughter and her father, that you not only see, you know, because I write about his parents, so I write about like his origins, where that dysfunction comes from, because I think that's important, not to just present the way that a person is broken, but to show who broke them, how they were broken. And in a way, that's Edie's story too, when you see her back in her childhood context. And so when it came to her father, when it came to like the depictions of Black men in this text, I mostly just wanted to feel like to be faithful to the way that it can be complex, the way that it can be complicated, and the way those sort of original formative relationships ripple into your adult romantic relationships, so that you have reason to understand why she is seeking things the way she's seeking, and you understand her a little more. But no, I totally feel that, and wanted to be really careful, but at the same time, I wanted to be free. You know, I wanted to bring a certain kind of honesty to the page, and that meant allowing kind of everyone to kind of have to be fallible.
What did you think? What was the pressure? What kind of story did you think that people would think, oh, you're a Black female writer. This is what you should be writing, or this is what your story is, right? Like, what was that story?
Well, I mean, I think it's funny. I feel like it wasn't in me to have a story that was, even though I wrote this book hoping desperately that it would be read. When I'm, you know, by myself with my open document, the only thing I can do is to be honest and write with as little shame as possible. And so like in the writing, the outside voices absolutely are not let in. It's only like after the book's into the world where I let all that in. But you know, I felt, yes, I definitely felt, because I wrote this book in workshop, you know, like I started writing it in workshops. So I'd bring it, like the first chapters I had, to class, and my cohort would talk about what they thought it was about and what they liked and what didn't make sense. And I remember, because when I'm writing, I never really have trouble articulating what it is, you know, until I'm done. But one of the first things I knew that I needed from this book was I needed a Black woman to be afforded the latitude to make mistakes and be human. And I knew that in writing that, I would be writing against the mandate of respectability. I knew I'd be writing about, and you know, I want to also like frame that by saying, like, you know, like Edie talks about her ancestors that came before her. They didn't have the privilege of being messy like this, you know, like it is like, I'm speaking from a position of privilege to talk about a person, a Black woman who kind of lives against respectability. Once respectability was how you lived. But I knew that I wanted not to like defer to that kind of, Brittany Cooper puts it so well in her book, Eloquent Rage. Like, she talks about respectability as an experiment in containment. And I believe that's the most perfect way to put it. I wanted to write against that containment, to allow Black women to be free.
You know, it's funny because I'm holding up the book, everyone. So in case you want to see the cover, just to keep the cover in your mind. And yes, I know that it's backwards, you guys. It's an IG thing. It's an Instagram thing. I'm not holding it right down. It is, it's just the mirror effect. But you know, it's true. And I think that's something that a lot of, any marginalized group is going to have, this certain, like the respectability politics.
Yeah.
Things in which we see one person and we feel, you know, we've all seen the news in which something's happened and the person on the reporter just has to find the like least articulate, the most correct, like one hair curler roller on this side person, and we're like, we're watching it and we're cringing it because we feel as if we'll be judged.
Yes.
And
Yes.
to an extent, we are. It's not fair. And I'm like, we should have the luxury of being as foolish, as dumb and ignorant as the most foolish, dumb, ignorant white person.
Yes.
I feel as if that person represents all of us. They just represent themselves, and hey, let them do them. But we don't have to
Yes.
bag down. And that's what I was saying is so important that we do. And I don't know if it's more of a personal thing that we all have to do, or if it's something that will happen when we see enough of ourselves. Can't say when we see enough of ourselves in media. When we see an array of the kind of depictions that are of depictions of us, when we see that, and we see more than one type in one story or two or three, and we just see like a big array, then maybe we'll stop feeling that way, because white people don't necessarily feel that way. They see one, it's just them. It's not like they were
no
and
broad generalizations are made about their character or about the state of their race. If there's one bad actor,
we have to let that,
you know,
we have to let go, because that used to make me so cringy. I mean, up until, I don't know, this year, last year, when I said I'm going to put that down and I'm not going to let myself do that, it would be like really, really embarrassing. Or the whole first, oh, I hope they weren't black. That's the first thing something happens, like, were they black?
But we all grew up when our parents would like look at the news and something would happen, and that is what they would say. Like we check to make sure.
My dad's thing would be, someone's on the news and they're like, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And my dad would say, no, I don't know what you're saying.
Right. But there is, like, I think you're right. Like it's more like it's scarcity. It's that there isn't enough. I mean, there is, I think there is, and we need to invest in Black artists in a way where their work can be visible and lifted up. Because there are plenty of Black artists doing the work. But I do think that until, there is less of the only person in the room, that we're going to look to each example as like a kind of, I don't know, an example that can be generalized, as opposed to this is just a specific depiction of one person. But you're right, like the detail that you said were one hair curler, like that kind of really resonated with me, because you're right, like that's such a minute detail, but that's the kind of madness of like kind of trying to cobble together a respectable performance as a Black person, is that not one detail, not one detail can be awry. And that makes it so that there is kind of no space, no latitude to, I don't know, to be what we all are, which is kind of, messy, human. Yeah.
Megan of Too Cool for Middle School says, a tiny bit of that is beginning to happen, more from just a straight, accurate historical perspective, and white people freak out over being generalized. Yes. I think sometimes historically, and not all white people, but in general, white people are so used to being the center of everything. There's an instance in which someone was in my comments, and she was just saying, I'm not racist. I'm sick and tired of people saying I'm racist. And she was like, hey, Maria, I'm wondering, like, are you wondering what you think of me? Because I met her before and I didn't remember. But then when I thought about it, I was like, I have met her before. I do know who she is. This is just someone I would say hi to sometimes when I would see her at a store.
Yeah.
And I felt so I was like, she's just feeling so bad. Like she's here, like all this stuff is going on. This is months ago. And she's just feeling kind of like, I didn't see in the comments where anyone was saying she was racist, but she was internalizing a lot of it. And then later about it, and I was like, wow, it's like I felt bad. But I was like, this is the thing. Instead of me allowed to be in my feelings about what's going on right now, and everyone's saying this is what we need to, because I was saying how we need to be economically strong. We need to do this.
Yeah.
Like, we shouldn't be begging for people to humanize us. We need to also take care of what we have to take care of as a community, and yada, yada. I'm sitting here trying to pour out a bunch of information, energy, to make sure she is feeling okay, that no, you're not racist, it's okay. And I'm like, this is the problem, though. This is the problem. It's not about you right now. It's not.
That's right.
And it happens a lot. That's kind of like a tangent. I just went on a tangent.
No, but there's no world in which like the accusation of racism is worse than the racism itself, like truly. And I think that like we're talking about what it looks like to live authentically and to try and you know
I'm a light real.
oh
I wasn't trying to be good right there. I just like I had to open like the window.
no, but I mean, I think even on the page, even though I was trying to write a character who is very much like uh, living her life against the idea of containment. She's still a person who, when confronted with um, racism and inequity, really struggles to articulate it, to the people in her life.
Mm-hmm.
She's still a person who is processing, as I think we all process, and who does it imperfectly, especially, because I think there's a lot of investment in kind of diminishing like the kind of quiet and loud versions of racism, and so that to claim it and to speak about it, and let alone say it to a person, it takes a real faith in yourself that our environment is constantly trying to dismantle. It takes a faith in your own eyes, and your own kind of dignity. And even on the page, even though Edie is chaotic, she still struggles with saying those uncomfortable things, or even kind of articulating what they are.
It was interesting too because she finds herself in a very white marriage in the middle of a very white marriage. But, and someone just brought this, James just mentioned Aquila, because I was going to get to Aquila too. James is saying, did the relationship Edie was able to cultivate with Aquila a catalyst? Was it a catalyst? Was it a catalyst for personal growth? Did she feel a responsibility to be a better person for her? And my question regarding Aquila was, what role do you think? Well, let's go to my question separately because it's a little different from his. So his is yes. Did her friendship or whatever that pseudo second guardian type vibe relationship she had with Aquila, was that a catalyst for making her a better person?
100%. I mean, I think throughout the book, Edie is searching for care. She's hoping that someone will kind of affirm the fact that she's serious and the fact that she's a person and wants to be an artist. And it really isn't until she, gets into that house and she sees someone who is kin, who needs her help, who is also kind of grappling with a different kind of isolation and loneliness, that she, I think, kind of ceases being the person who is looking for care, even though she still is, but becomes a person who can give care. And that was really important to me, because I think there are moments in the book where Edie kind of very nearly misses a really possibly kind of nourishing relationship. But in this case, I really needed these two kind of young Black women to connect and to feel, each other's kind of support. And even that is kind of complicated. They don't immediately become best friends, and they both have their kind of, specific hangups and wounds. But it was important for me to show, I mean, one, a Black child being cared for, being seen, but also that kind of really specific bond
Mm-hmm.
that you share, as kind of one Black woman to another.
Also, I was wondering too, when you chose to make their daughter, when in creating the story, a Black girl, were you speaking to anything with white guilt? Does that have anything to do with why they chose Aquila? Is it really like because they would say that it had nothing to do with that? Did it?
Well, it was more just I wanted to show what it looks like to when you're trying to kind of self-realize as a Black kid in an environment that cannot witness you, in an environment where you don't have reference points or access to the lived experience that you need to survive. There's the part in the book where they have that interaction with the police, and Edie is taken aback because she can kind of see through Akila's conduct, which is interesting, right? Like, because even then, there is really no real way to behave in order to be like afforded empathy in that moment.
Yes.
But Edie still, you know, as an extremely messy person, does feel what I'm sure an older generation would feel about her, which is, how come you don't know this? Like, how come you don't know how to behave in order to live, right? And that is, it's not a thing that's actually real, in terms of like, there's XYZ to do in order to survive those encounters. But it is one kind of more example of the necessity of lived experience, of being kind of near that and having someone who understands what your reality is to kind of guide you. And Akila, you know, what that looks like when you don't. And Akila doesn't have that. And a great amount of her isolation is part of that. So it was more just that, like what it looks like, because that, you know, whether or not you're like, it's a like interracial adoption or not, like there are tons of, you know, like kids, you know, who are, you know, Black, brown, who are coming up in areas where they don't see anyone who looks like them. And that has an effect on how you develop and how you, you know, how you feel, you know, how you value yourself.
What hit me, and I'm gonna talk right now, and I'm gonna fix this light, because you know what? I've been dealing with regular broad daylight, and we're nearing the winter solstice, so it's getting dark. And I think in a few seconds it's just gonna be completely dark right here. So I'm gonna ask you this while I move. I'm still here though. But one thing that really took note is, now you guys, this is like we're just on FaceTime. Me and Raven are on FaceTime. We all just checking it out, because this is how it goes down. FaceTime with your friends. One thing that really, I'm sure, resonated with a lot of people is when she had to explain how to do Akila's hair. The fact that it was like, I don't like to use the word unkempt, because that wasn't what was going on. What was happening was that her parents didn't know how to care for her hair in the most basic hair care way. Forget style.
No, it was unkempt.
And it resonated with
You're not wrong. Yeah.
Well, okay, because that was the problem. It was that they didn't know how to actually take care of her hair on a basic level.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of being in school, because I grew up in a military base, so I grew up all over the place, and I knew some kids who actually it reminded me of someone specifically, because she actually grew up in with a white family, and yes, I remember she was really well liked, but I remember some of the Black kids being like, I mean, you can tell it's just her whole family's white, because she's trying to do her hair like it's not the same, and it's just like hair care. It was just like short, but it's just like the hair care wasn't there, and it's different. And people think that automatically we come to an array, right? Because Black people have all different hair textures, hair textures. But she was just experiencing that whole thing, and being in spaces in which there's like I mean, it's like preaching to the choir. Most of you guys who are tuned in, you already know this already. It's nothing new. But it's even simple things like when, you know, you go to the hairdresser and they have, you know, you buy hair products, and it's for like mainly audience like Caucasian, right? But you have an array of hair care products. And I used to always say, it really annoyed me when it would be like, this is fine, coarse. Or I was like, there's another word for it, but you're using all these words negative.
Even like even the language. No, even the language around, you know, Black hair needs work deeply. You know, and it's funny you bring that up, because I do remember, like, I came up in an upstate suburb after we moved from the Bronx. I like moved from the city when I was about 7, and then I spent like my teenage years in a suburb that was pretty, you know, when we got there weren't that many people of color around, not in the neighborhood and not in school. And I remember going to like those sort of local pharmacies trying trying to find, hair care products, and it's like one shelf relegated to the bottom, old, you know, old grease. And I do think that we're in a totally different place now. I think we've since kind of had like a natural hair renaissance that where I feel like a lot of Black women have been able to kind of get to know their natural hair and kind of figure out what they want to do, because I do think it's important when we talk about hair to be respectful of Black women's agency. I think there's a tendency to kind of put value judgments on how a Black woman wears her hair, but I think if it makes you feel good, then it's good. But in the book, that was important to me, because being able to care for yourself, for your body and your hair, that's hugely important to how to your self-worth. It feels like a thing is easy to diminish, but it's the truth, especially when I think there is an entire context around Black hair that is God that is fraught with kind of racist politics. I remember the very first time that I wore my hair natural at work. It was a conversation I had with myself, because if every now and then there's a woman in the news who dared to wear her hair natural at work and was deemed unprofessional for wearing her hair as it grows out of her head. And so it's not, Black hair is not like inextricable from like our culture in the way that our culture frames it as like unprofessional, as the words you use, like that we see on our hair products. But I wanted to write that scene in the book where they're kind of, Edie can give Akilah this care, this affirmation of her beauty, that I think is really necessary in a world that is extremely invested in controlling the bodies of Black women, including our hair. And, more specifically, Akilah doesn't have to care for hair because no one has taught her how. But I wanted that to be more as like Edie as an older, kind of person, ushering her into like the really kind of beautiful world of Black hair, because it's so rich. And I wanted to, I needed that to be able to kind of show that relationship, and even just the kind of closeness of that, what it feels like to sit between another Black woman's knees as she tends to your hair. And it's really tender. And I think in this book, that tenderness was needed.
The thing that I found so interesting and also really beautiful was that I felt like Edie gives Akilah a lot of the love she doesn't give herself. She gives her so much tenderness. There's so much care, so much attention. She's so careful and patient and observant, even when watching her with the tutor. Who she's picking up those like racist undertones of like the way he's scolding her. Like she's so tender. She's nowhere near as, she's not tender with herself at all, actually. But I felt like that gave me hope. One day she'll be able to turn that love that's going outward, maybe inward a little bit too.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that was how the book kind of feels toward the end, where she has that tenderness in part because she finally does feel that she has the right to do the thing that she loves. It's still going to be a process going forward, but she is no longer, there's that moment even with Eric, where she kind of has this moment of hindsight where she sees the way she's been deferring to this person and kind of diminishing her own value in that kind of transactional relationship. Even like, I don't want to talk about that judgmentally, because I think that like many of us have found ourselves and kind of been able to illuminate what we want and what we absolutely cannot put up with through those romantic relationships. It's true. I think that's totally normal. But the idea of, I have something to offer, that the life that I'm living also has weight and meaning. She realizes that, I think, toward the end of that, like, but also through, continued practice of her work, finally, but yeah, you're right. I was, I really also hope in the kind of future, like past the last page, that the the care that she was
Yeah.
able to show Aquila is something that she can give to herself.
Yes. It gave me a hope. Like you said, after the last page, and it gives me hope for what can come, what can possibly come in the future. Before you leave, though, we have to talk writing process. We have to talk craft, because your
Yeah,
prose is just so gorgeous, so lush. You've already heard it a million gazillion times, but I have to tell you, it's
I love hearing it.
so beautiful. So I
Thank
do want to talk
you.
a little bit about craft. Um, do you create the first draft with the freedom of knowing you'll go back to revise, or are you one of those writers who's like, I can't go further until I read back what I wrote yesterday and perfect every line? Like, which writer are you?
I like the voice you put on for that latter one, and I am the latter one. Like, I am very much the person who is like, I'm very particular, and very like, I end up always going back to the draft, and like a bunch of things change. But in the writing, I'm really like sentence, like if I'm lucky, couple sentences in an hour,
Ooh.
and it has to feel, as I'm reading it, like this is gonna be the last version of it. This is the final version, and I really truly can't continue to my next thought unless it feels like that. Until like the next day when I go back and I like delete things. But no, I very much am like slow, very slow progress, very granular, and partly I think I really just can't like nothing comes to me unless I'm, you know like I need that last thought to be final so that I can feel the next thought.
So what was your revision process with your editor? How much did you have to revise? Was the story always so short? Someone was asking, she said, what inspired this? Jasenia Davis asks, what inspired the style in which the novel was written? It was a short novel, but yet packed a punch. Also because every single word, every sentence, everything is carefully chosen. So was this originally longer? Did you expand it during revisions? What was that process like?
I actually think it might have been slightly a shorter book before revision. I really do like, I write as much as I have, and then when I'm done, I'm done. And I really love a short book. Like, I love reading. I mean, because you feel like, you feel accomplished to kind of make your way through a nice short book. I really just, I think part of it is I felt in the writing of this, even though it was very much, a solitary, like private thing where I kind of had to do my own thing and not think about, what people might think. I still felt like I want to write this book in a way that I'm going to keep a person with me. I want to make it so that the person who's
Mm-hmm.
reading wants to turn the page. And so that makes it so that when I'm writing, I am condensing so that the action is like, you don't have to wait much, it's so long for something to
Yeah.
happen. So I think that also makes it much shorter.
We have like moments. They're like moments, snapshots. You're getting in late and
Yeah.
you're leaving early, essentially.
Yeah. Yes.
So what is your writing routine, and do you have one?
I do. I mean, it's very much, I have to be alone. I can't write in a cafe. I've tried it. I like the idea of it, but in order to write, I have to feel like totally unguarded. And I just can't be as unguarded as I need to be in public. And so I write at home in bed where I am right now, like literally where I am right now. And really, truly, I just write until I can't anymore. Yeah, I always, like, if I can't write, I think just get one sentence. And then then it gets me in it, and then I'm in it, and I have no sense of time. Like, I literally have, I start, and then the sun is gone. And I really, it's just something I do at home. Yeah, it's kind of like my sanctuary.
Do you write almost every day or every day?
No, I do think that that's important to do it regularly and not wait. for inspiration, you know, but also to be gentle with yourself and to like forgive yourself when you know, nothing's coming.
Mm-hmm.
But I really only like, I don't write every day because it's not every day that you know, I have something that I move to write. Even though I just said that thing about not waiting for inspiration, I really just, yeah, I kind of write when, if I'm working on a project, then yes, every day. But if I'm not, if I'm between, I kind of will wait for, yeah, I'll wait for something to get me. Because once it gets me, then I'm gone. I'm not, no one sees me until it's done.
Wow. Okay. So then you kind of like binge write a little bit.
Yeah, very much. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay. So are you able to tell us, or do you want to even tell us what you're working on
Well,
right
I'm working
now?
on a
I feel
few
like there's a
short
lot of pressure.
stories. No, yeah, no, I'm working on, I go through cycles where I write like longer, you know, like novel length stuff I'm trying to work on and get out. And
Mhm.
then shorter stories get me back in the rhythm, and then like a longer piece. So right now, it's my way of kind of gently getting back into writing. And this year has been so absolutely wild and, um, you know, amazing around the book, but obviously for stressful for other reasons. That I think it took me longer to get back into it. So I'm kind of tentatively writing short stories again, which I'm really excited about.
Wonderful. I can't wait to read those. If they're for us to read, unless it's just for you.
Yes, yes. No, hopefully they will be read.
Before you leave, is there anything that you would like? Have you been reading anything that you love? Any book recommendations? I always ask if people are reading, like,
Yes,
it doesn't have to be like three. Yeah, any book recommendations that you have for us?
yes. I have, sorry, dropping things everywhere. This book is really, really wonderful. It's a collection. And
Mm-hmm.
Morgan Jerkin has
Blood
a new
Heat.
book coming out. Yes. Morgan Jerkin has a new book coming out called Caul Baby. And
Mm-hmm.
I really, really love, actually, I'm really late to this book, but I really, really dig the new me. And yeah,
Oh,
I think those are kind of like the, oh, actually, you know what? If I have it with me, I don't.
all
But
good.
like
I've been
Hex by
getting up.
Rebecca Dinerstein. I love that book. It's like really, the language is so beautiful and dense. So yeah, those are four
Hex.
books that I'm really digging. Rebecca Dinerstein.
Okay, Hex by Rebecca Dynasty.
Dinerstein.
Dynasty. Hex sounds familiar, but I don't know if I'm confusing it with something else. Um, that one. I wonder if that was on my radar. I know that the new me was on my radar a while
Yes,
ago and
yes.
kept just TBR. But yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Raven. Thank you so much for chatting with us, taking time out of your day to chill. I'm sitting here in this library that was getting dark. I'm getting up, opening windows, grabbing lamps. You're sitting on the bed, like, all what you're doing,
Oh,
talking
this is so
about.
wonderful. Like, I think you
Oh, we're just like,
we both
okay.
froze.
I'm like, you guys, if you haven't picked up Luster, definitely pick it up. Read it. I know if you finished it, if you finished it already, great. But if you've yet to read it, go ahead and pick this up now. You can go to bookshop.org, support any of your indie bookstores. You can go to Amazon too, barnesandnoble.com too. You can also grab the ebook. You know, there's an app, Kindle app, and iBooks app, so you can literally have it like in seconds. But this is fantastic and so beautiful for you aspiring writers out there. You could eat these sentences. So here's some more inspiration for you. And thank you just so much for joining us and for
No,
creating
thank
this
you.
beautiful
This is a
story.
dream. Like, this is a real dream. I'm just like the biggest fan. This is so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. And again, thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.